Welcome to Beyond The Chord with me, Cara.
And me, Malba.
Join us each week where we will talk about the ups and downs of being songwriters over the age of 40 and what it's really like juggling motherhood, menopause, and keeping that creative spark alive. As if that wasn't enough, each week we will write a new song together and perform it live on the podcast. So get comfy, grab a cuppa, and let's dive in. So, hi!
Hi.
Welcome to episode 4.
Oh my god,
We made it to episode 4.
I know. Just.
Kind of, I mean, yeah.
And
amazingly, people are still listening.
More and more people are listening.
More and more people are listening, which is even, that's just mad. Just mad.
Totally. Mad mental.
Mad mental. Mental mad, which is actually quite appropriate for today's topic.
Yes.
Mm-hmm. Uh-huh. Mm-hmm.
Well, we start with you then. How was your week?
Sure. My week has been good. My week has been good. I had a very interesting conversation with my 7-year-old about mobile phones.
Oofed.
She wasn't asking for one.
Come.
Well, that was what the conversation was about, because she's obviously made the assumption that at some point in her life she will have a phone.
Uh-huh.
And that's difficult to argue with because we live in a society where everybody has a phone.
Yes.
But I have it in my mind, and I know you're going to laugh, and probably most mums who have teenagers right now will laugh at me, but in my head at the moment, while she's 7, the minimum age that I'm thinking is 16. I know, I can see your face, you're laughing. But the reason for that is I genuinely don't think kids should have phones until they're 16, at least.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I have a phone, you can see what's on them.
Yeah.
I don't want them. I just don't want them to see what's on them.
I hear you.
But
well,
when did your kids get a phone?
Oh, I genuinely don't know. Because it was different in my day. Because when Aiden was 7.
You got one at 7?
No. When Aiden was 7, I'm trying to think back. No. I think. I mean, that was what? Aiden's now 19, so that was 12 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
Then it wasn't the thing that it is now. Can't even think of the right word. It wasn't as all encompassing and pervasive. Back then, I could just be literally making this up. But I suspect he didn't get his first phone until he went into first year.
So that's what, 12, 13?
Yeah. I think. I could be wrong. But I think it's like anything else, in a perfect world, I would prefer not to have a phone.
Yeah.
I'd
be interested to hear what the listeners think on this one, because it does divide people, I think.
Yeah, totally.
So if you have any comments on that, then let us know on Instagram.
Let us know.
Yeah.
Because I think it's one of those things, again, it's an individual's right to decide when that is. And, Cara has a phone and she's in P7 purely because, it's her sister's old phone or her brother's old phone.
That was a phone that we just heard.
Well, it was your phone. It wasn't my phone.
Oh, right.
I have
Sorry about that. But I'm over 16, so
that's fine.
Well, way over 16.
I never have notifications on for anything, and it drives.
Normally, mine's on silent, but the doctor was phoning this morning.
Yeah, it usually drives my kids nuts that I have no notifications. I was like, I don't want to be notified when anything's happening.
I know, I've turned off my it's back on vibrate.
Kieran has his on all the time. It does my nut in.
Yeah, I don't. Yeah.
I don't need to be notified.
I don't need
thanks.
to hear the phone
all the time. Yeah, I think it's a difficult choice, because it is that, you know, Cara's got hers mainly so that, you know, because she wanted to go to the bus herself, and it's literally a 2-minute walk through the park, you know. And when Aidan and Hannah were wee, when I let them go to the bus themselves, I used to hide in the bushes.
Did you?
To make sure they got on the bus okay. And I think, you know, by the time you get to child 3, you're like, they'll be fine. I think we've talked about this before, maybe not on the podcast, but maybe that's a conversation for another day. But yeah, you know, you become, I think,
you become more confident.
Well, yeah, and I think you just become more tired, and you go, yeah.
Well, yeah, that's probably more likely. I'm trying to be positive here.
Well, that's why we balance each other. I'm beginning to realise more and more.
Well,
more on that.
So the conversation was she had the expectation that it would come, and I said yes, probably in the future. And she, like, because she's 7 and she's just sweet, she was accepting of the fact that 16 was the minimum, but that's because she's 7. Obviously, I'm not stupid,
Sorry.
so I know it's going to
Sorry
change.
for cackling.
I know it will change the older she gets and the more she asks, but I can be stubborn. I mean, we'll just not speak for a few years until she's 16, or she'll get one on the black market or something like that, you know.
Doing deals with pals.
Probably, you know, selling phones out the back instead of cigarettes and vapes. I don't know.
No, but I mean, you can have your, you know, what you would like, and then
I know
there's reality, you know.
And
I think high school is, you know, I think it becomes that balance of, yeah, I would prefer they didn't, but also I wouldn't want her singled out because she doesn't have one, which is terrible on one level, you know. But I think I've learned to accept that what you can do in this, you know, technological world is just try and support them and have boundaries, you know.
Just while I remember, we need to verify.
Oh yeah,
we got some sad news about Doris Day.
Yeah.
So if you tuned in last week and you heard our chat, which if you haven't, you should. By the way, it was really good.
Where were you?
I know. Come on. Doris Day has indeed passed away.
I know. I think I've just blocked it out.
It wasn't that long ago.
It was 2019.
So
she did well.
Yeah.
But yeah,
she did well.
She did well. I just was blocking out the fact in my head she's still alive and
well, she lives
singing
on, doesn't she?
Sera Sera.
Yeah, she lives on.
We can just watch Calamity Jane again, which I didn't do actually.
Oh, well, there you go. There's your homework for next week. So that was my week.
Yeah.
A bit of a glimpse into the future.
One to think about.
What about you? How was your week?
Okay.
What a loaded question.
Normally when we have this question, Carrie hears how my week's been.
Yes.
On the podcast. This week that wasn't possible. Because following on from a previous episode about digging deeper, it's been a week of highs and lows. And the highs where Aidan, my son, graduated on Monday with his degree in game art animation, which I'm not even sure what that is, to be fair, because he doesn't really show you much of his work, although I did get to see a show reel at the graduation. I was like, oh, that's amazing. So that was, yeah, definitely, like, on one hand, oh my God, I'm super duper proud of him. But on the other hand, I'm kind of like, oh my God, you're 19? How did that happen?
Wow.
I don't genuinely... And I think that's, like, there might be a theme here of me going, oh, I don't quite like, I genuinely am not sure where the last 19 years have gone of my life. Maybe that's a mammy thing. So that was, a lovely day.
Sounds like you've had lots of proud mama moments.
Oh, absolutely. And I'm sure there's more. Oh, and Cara's dance show on Saturday,
Aww.
which, was... She was absolutely amazing, and I'm not just saying that because I'm her mum, but I was really surprised at how good.
Let's hope she never hears this.
I know.
I was dead surprised you were good.
No, but let's hope none of my children ever listen to this. But, and I don't mean that in a cheeky way, but I was like, oh my God, you're like an amazing dancer. And it's not like something that she just goes because her pals go. And, I don't think she's going to be, she wants a career in dancing. She wants a career in horse riding,
That sounds like a great career.
Well, a very expensive career.
So I've got a story about that.
Oh, what's your story?
So when I was young,
You had a horse?
I wish. No, I liked the idea of horses when I was young. And for Christmas one year, I asked Santa for a horse.
No.
I did. I was like, well, I was young and thought that's what you asked for. Take from that what you will. So, wrote to Santa, please can I have a horse? Has to be chestnut brown, with the white, thing on its face.
It's
technical.
nose.
Aye, nose. And woke up on Christmas morning, went down the stairs. Obviously, there was no horse in my living room. And I was like, oh, well, that's disappointing. And I opened up my gift, and it was a picture of a horse. Like a framed photograph of a brown horse with a white nose. And I was like,
that's my horse.
That's my horse? Santa's actually got me a... Where is it? Like, is it in the garden? Like, whoo. No. It was just a photograph of a horse. And it happened to be my dad's secretary's horse. They'd gone out to the stable, taken a photo, and put it in a frame.
Disappointing, but lovely.
Well, I did get to ride the horse. Like, I got taken out to see said horse, and I got to ride it round like the paddock a couple of times.
Not really the same, though.
Not the same as owning one, no. But that became like a running joke, like in the family. Whenever I would ask for something outrageous, I would get a photograph of it.
You should keep that tradition on.
I was going to this year because my eldest was like, she wants a horse. I was like, got just the thing. I've still got the photograph.
But is that a traumatic memory or a funny memory?
Traumatic at the time, funny now.
Just like life, really.
Yeah, as it does, yeah. So there you go. That's the week roundup.
Yeah. Let's not go into the low part.
Yeah.
Well, we could.
Oh,
we could have been. Aye, we're going to talk about that.
Do we have any unverified menopause facts this week?
Well, I have confessions.
Oh.
So I did look for menopause facts.
That was very disappointed. Oh.
I did look for menopause facts, and I couldn't find anything that was remotely interesting, apart from like 75% of women have a terrible time during menopause, and I was like,
well, that's just fact.
Well, is it though? Is it?
Or is it higher number?
Well, what I've decided is, because I thought, okay, Cara does a good menopause fact, I'm going to do me and my menopause, and I'm not going to call them facts. What could I call them? I don't know, I'll think of something.
Okay.
But I remember, at least 10 years ago or more, I'm sure it was a health professional, a therapist of some sort, was like, oh, I really want to recommend you this book, and it's about, it's called The Ageless Woman. It's all about, menopause. And I know we're trying not to swear, but I'm sure you can imagine, I was raging that this woman had the audacity. Not that I even knew what menopause was, but I was like, how dare you say that I'm in the menopause now? And so...
Were you affronted?
Oh, I was affronted. The rage was real. And so, but at the time I thought, okay, I'll get this book. Maybe it's a really good book. And it sat on my shelf for 10 years because I was so raging.
I was so offended
I was
that
so
it was
offended.
there.
But I think as well, for me, the thought of all as I knew about being menopausal was that you couldn't have any more babies. And
Yeah, there wasn't much of an education
apart
around it,
from
was
that,
there?
that was all I really knew. And at that point, I was like, please don't tell me I'm not going to have any more babies, because that really devastates me. And I've kind of, I mean, only recently, to be fair, I've kind of accepted that, because I did want more children. So I'm going to call maybe yours could be menopause fact, but mine's could be menopause, I don't know. I'll need to think of a word.
Wonderings.
Yeah. So when I couldn't find a menopause fact, I brought my book called The Ageless Woman, Natural Health and Beauty After 40. Because maybe what I realised was, hang on a minute, you don't watch the news or read newspapers.
To be fair, right now you don't want to.
Right? Because I don't need that energy in my life. It's hard enough to keep my own head above the water. And it's not that I don't want to be knowledgeable about what's going on in the world, but I thought, so rather than me going online and looking for facts, because you seem to be able to I was going to say ferret out.
Interesting turn of phrase.
But like, you always seem to find really interesting facts about menopause, and I thought, I can't compete with that, right? And I'll think of something about so I'm going to do the kind of more woo-woo.
Okay, right, hang on,
Right, not woo-woo.
Let me get my eyes ready to roll.
But not woo-woo, but just a different perspective
Right.
of maybe what most of the population feel. So I'm going to use this book as okay, let's just see what happens and maybe read something from it.
Okay.
So this is a fact, I suppose, unverified. So many of us in our 40s and 50s are in the midst of our own transformation, entering menopause in record numbers. Soon, for the first time in history, unverified, there will be more women beyond menopause than have yet to go through it. So there'll be more menopausal women are taking over the world, I think.
That's true.
Well, is there not somebody said that
That was,
Western women are going to be...
well, think about it. Women are having their babies later because you have to, because you can't afford to have them earlier. And we have an aging, well, in Scotland anyway, we have an aging population, so that would be true.
Yeah. So I'm sure somebody said that, like if we rise up, then...
Oh, God help them.
Because the rage is real. So I loved this, and it said, our bodies are natural.
Yes.
Yes. Our menopause is natural.
Yes.
Right? And I'm not sure. Our treatment for menopause must be natural. I'm not sure
I think we
quite
haven't
agree
got
with
there
that.
yet.
Right? Not because but it's something for us to think about. And it says we find ourselves in a double transformation, one happening within, in our minds, our bodies and hormones. Well, I can attest to that after the week I've had. And then another happening without, in our culture's healing revolution. Now again, take of that what you will. But I think there is something empowering about going, actually, this is a natural part of being a woman, and just because nobody's ever told us about it or talked about it or informed us about it doesn't mean that it makes it any less natural. So again, I'm sure I've got friends who are use HRT, and so do you, and I would never say to anybody that that's right or wrong, but I think it is about And here's what I remember about being diagnosed with cancer. And I know that's a bit tangential, but it is relevant, is that it's a very personal thing. Yes, it affects other people around about you in a traumatic way, but what you need to do to navigate that, only you can decide. And it's a bit like menopause, I suppose. Only you can decide what's right for your body. And I think there was something really good in this about, here it is. More and more women are looking beyond the modern medical model to older, more time-tested solutions to their health problems. We intuitively sense that menopause is not a mistake or failure of our physiology, but a deeply significant developmental shift that should be honoured and embraced. The wisdom offered by older traditions, in this case it's talking about Ayurveda, offered by older traditions, along with a deepening trust in our intuitive experience of what's right for our bodies, points in a new and promising direction, including a more natural approach to menopause. So for me, that's, I think, what I'm trying to... So maybe that'll be my menopause perspective.
I really like that. That was
Do you like that?
That was super interesting. I felt like I learned something there.
But I think that's the thing, and I think that brings us back to, we are all different, and I think that's what's really... So I'm going to maybe call it menopause excitement or something.
I think we'll work on the name, yeah.
Okay, maybe. But do you know what I mean? Like, what I realised is I have to do my take on menopause.
Yes.
And not try and be you in terms of finding a menopause. Like an interest, a fabulous menopause facts,
I just like the kind of silliness, nonsense aspect of it, because that helps me to process it through humour.
Yeah.
Because when I was told, and I was told young, like I was probably mid-30s when it started, and I had no idea because I was trying to get pregnant with my second child. So there was that journey, and anyone who's been there knows what that's like. Yeah. And then as I had her, it really kicked in, but I didn't know. I had no idea. I didn't know what was going on. It was just a very scary time. So it was only when I kind of came to my 40s when I went to the doctor, because you have to wait a certain amount of time before they'll even see you or entertain the fact. My doctor was fantastic, because straight away she picked up on it. It was a woman, so I don't know if that was why, but I told her some symptoms, and she had me in straight away on the blood test, checking hormone levels straight off the bat. Had a second test so they could compare, and then she told me. And when she phoned me, she was like, the first question I need to ask is, are you finished having your children? I was like, well, yes, we'd made our decision, like two and through. We were done. And she was like, oh, well, this won't be so devastating then. I was like, ta-da! And at the time I was like, okay, well, it was all very practical. I was like, okay, right, well, that's that. This is what's happening next. But then when it sinks in, and like you said about the babies thing, like, although we didn't plan to have any more, it was still that sadness of,
oh, absolutely.
Well, even if I wanted, I couldn't. And many women will relate to that, not necessarily because of menopause, but just because of their physiology anyway, and they weren't able to have children. But that's a sadness you can't really explain.
Absolutely. And I think for me, I would be convincing myself that at like 50 there was still an outside chance.
But then you hear about, I was thinking about this, you hear about women
it could happen
in their 60s having kids. How does
I think
that
that's
happen?
more IVF-y type.
Is it?
I think. And again, I think we are both of the similar, I can't think of the word, But we would never judge anybody for the choices that they make.
No.
Because it's their choice, But I remember...
I mean, you might not.
But I'm judging you right now. I remember my mum, my mum had 5 miscarriages and, was, I think, nearly sectioned, back then, in the 60s, and I think they told her, please don't try again because you will, So when my mum went through the menopause, I mean, it was a horrific time, and only, and she was, I don't think she was mentally well, for most of her life, and hopefully she's listening up, and,
If she doesn't mind leaving a review, that would be... I would be
like
super
an angelic
helpful.
review.
from Beyond.
But how terrible, even looking back now, although it was a terrible time for her and for me, because I was a teenager and she was menopausal, and I'm adopted, I'm sure that must have been really horrific to go, well, it is now never going to happen for me, So yeah, and I think my, because I was last pregnant when I was, what age am I now? Not sure.
Oh, do we have to do maths? I can't do maths.
But it was only 7 years ago, put it that way.
Okay. We don't need to reveal ages.
Aye, we can just make that up. But yeah, I was last pregnant 7 years ago, and I was like, oh my God, unfortunately, and a lot of women have been through this as well, where they've had miscarriages, and I have had 2. But at that point, I was like, it was just after my mum had died, and I thought, oh, that's my mum going, okay, I'll give you another baby, that'll distract you from the grief of losing my mum. And then sadly, it didn't work out. But you can imagine people's grief, whether they've wanted children or not.
Yeah.
And whether you've had miscarriages or not, that it is there is a grief around that part of your life.
Yeah.
And it's been such a massive part of your life. So we'll come up. Maybe the listeners could come up with what we should call a menopause.
The listeners have been put to work today. I mean, we're asking an awful lot.
Well, it is an interactive. I was going to say it's an interactive quiz, but it's not a quiz.
No.
But you know what I mean? No, I don't even know what I mean. So.
Scratch that.
Maybe not. But I think I'm going to just bring the ageless woman at the table and try and...
I think that's a good idea, because
Yeah.
we can balance out the humour with actually maybe learning something, which would be really
maybe
useful.
I think it's just menopause nature or something like that.
Ooh, yeah.
Well, I quite like that.
It's filthy.
It is filthy. But just like we are natural and we're women, and yeah. So that's my menopause.
Something.
Yeah. Menopause.
Contribution. ...
To
be continued.
Maybe. Oh no! Do you remember what the fact is that we've to verify next week? It's that rule thing.
The rule thing, yes. So, moving on.
Mm-hmm.
Question of the week,
Mm-hmm.
which we tend to talk more about how this all relates to songwriting and how...
Thanks for reminding me.
You're very welcome. That's what I'm here for. How that relates to songwriting and things like that. So the question of the week this week is how are your basic needs met as a songwriter?
Oft.
So we've talked a wee bit about how, have we talked about how they're met in menopause? Well, sort of. People take different, some are on HRT, some take more natural methods to manage the symptoms of menopause. But how would you do that for your songwriting process?
Well, it's quite interesting because I've realised that, this podcast will inevitably touch on mental health, and because it's a subject that I am well versed in my lived experience, and I was talking about this yesterday, in fact, and we were talking about and maybe we talked about it last week as well on the podcast, about being positive and how, of course we all know on a fundamental level that, we are divine human beings and fully abundant, and, and that was where Patchwork Perfect came from, our song from last week. But I was talking to a friend about how, not feeling like your basic needs are being met, and for a lot of people in this world, basic needs aren't being met. And I know I'm very fortunate that, I have a roof over my head, I have food on the table, but it made me think of, I'm not meeting my basic needs in terms of being a creative person, or out with being a mother and a wife and a friend and all the other roles that we play. So it's made me think, well, what are my basic needs? And I only really realised this last night, so I haven't really figured out what my basic needs are. But I think that's what's really fascinating about this week's question, because I think we all have to think about what is our basic need beyond all the roles that we play and, all the old core beliefs that we have. And I know for me, it's taken me a long time to even acknowledge that it's okay to want some basic needs, and I think it relates back to, it's all very well and good figuring out what those are, but sometimes the challenge is going, no matter how I feel, I'm still going to meet those basic needs for myself. If that's, we talked about it before, for me, a 10-minute practice of dancing for 3 minutes, writing for 5 minutes, and sitting in silence for 2. That was like a big part of the whole basis of the research I did around my masters was, play every day, use that time for yourself. And so I haven't figured out what my basic needs are yet, but I know that it has to involve me being able to express, whether that's, in writing or writing a song or interpretative dance.
I would love to see that.
Well, but there is something around, that somatic part of moving things out your body, and for me, I love dancing, and but again, and that's what I think is really interesting about that book, The Ageless Woman, which I haven't read. I just opened it a page today. I love doing that. It's just opening a page and finding something, and maybe that could be, menopause lottery or something. I don't know, like menopause lottery.
That's quite good. You should do that. So don't read the book, just open it.
Yeah.
See what comes out.
Rather than feeling that you've got to have all this knowledge. And
we don't plan anything else, so why would we plan that?
That's true. That's true. Yeah, so I think it is about giving yourself that space to go, well, what is fundamental for me and my own mental health? And I find that quite hard. Because I think a lot of women don't look after themselves, so I'm learning, and I suppose we could talk about that over, you know, the coming weeks and months and years. But I think what I'm figuring out today is that even if it's like, again, what's the tiniest thing you could do for yourself? You know, and the tiniest thing I could have done for myself was getting out my bed and coming to do this podcast, you know. But if you know, and I think for me, you have to take those small wins, you know. What about you? What do you think your basic needs is as a songwriter?
My basic needs as a songwriter is space. And I gave up, I've touched on this before, but I gave up music in my 20s, late 20s, and it wasn't working out in terms of my vision of success. And I stopped completely, and it was about 10 years where I just didn't write, sing, go to gigs, listen even to the radio. Like, I just completely cut music out of my life completely because it was too painful to be near it. But in those 10 years or so, I was not myself. I just wasn't happy, which sounds very kind of like on the surface, but I mean inside I wasn't complete. And it's something I've spoken to my husband about fairly recently. He brought it up actually. He actually said to me, "You have to write." Because when you're not writing or doing anything with music, even if it's just tinkering about, whatever, when you're not doing that, basically you're a nightmare.
Darling.
With the greatest love and respect.
Can I just mirror something back to you?
You're a total nightmare. But he was like, but in all seriousness, you need that outlet to process how you live life and what you see and how you channel all of these, especially now, all of these emotions and all of these changes. That's what the album was all about. It was all about that transformation of becoming a mother from being a single entity. That in itself was a transformation, and I talk about that a lot on the album, in various ways, and how it impacts you, how you see your relationships with other people as well as yourself. Right, it's all about perspectives on, like, the two different perspectives of inner and outer voices.
See what you did there.
See what I did there. But no, having that space, so I deliberately have a space where I need to be on my own, or if I'm working with someone, collaborating. I only collaborate with you.
You do that now.
'Cause I do that now. I'm a collaborator.
Cara collaborator.
It needs to be our space. I can't do it in the company of other people. I need that mental space, physical space. I need silence a lot of the time. Like, I like to be quiet and calm. Like, at night time is when most of my ideas come to me, just before I go off to sleep. It's really annoying because I'm really tired. But I'm just like, oh, that's an idea, I can't let it go, so I have to write it down. So that's my basic need, space. And if I don't have that, it really does affect the rest of my life and how I am, how I act. And people don't want to be around me. So for everybody's sake, I have to write. But mainly my own, because I really find so much joy in it.
Yeah, and I think that's the, you know, whatever your creative endeavour is, and I think that for me, it's as much about physical space as headspace.
Headspace is a big one, I think, for most people.
Oh my God.
It's difficult to, I know we have like a tips or advice section, but I find this one a difficult one to advise on because it's so individual.
Headspace?
Well, any kind of, like, your basic needs, if you don't know what they are yourself, you can't really advise someone else on what they should be.
Yeah.
So maybe that's the tip. Figure out what your basic needs are and see how they can be met.
Yeah, and that's, you know, and, you know, when you're saying there about what you need is space, you know, for me, I have the physical space, but I don't a lot of the time have the mental headspace, because you feel like you're constantly, everything is fairly relentless, and you don't, it's not that you don't have time to stop, but you're choosing not to. And I think and I'm so glad you said that about space, and that Doug said that to you, because I realise too that when I don't write, it's not physically, whether it is through interpretative dance, but there is a lot of work around somatic therapy, around physically moving things out of your cellular memory and moving it out of your body. And if you don't move, then it doesn't get stuck. It gets stuck, And I do realise when you were saying that actually I'm the same. I'm at my most I'm at my most ER, and we were just talking about that before we
put the mics on.
I veered from ER to Tiger, and not really very much in between.
I'm just constantly poo.
I could have told you that.
With my hand in a jar of honey. That's me.
And that's why we work so well together. I think I would like to be a bit more poo. No, actually, Winnie the Pooh.
Yeah.
Just to clarify. But yeah, so thank you for saying about the space thing, and and thanks to Doug for recognising that in you, and because then that's helped me recognise that actually if I don't write every day, irrespective of the negative voices we have in our mind going, "Not your rubbish," and who wants to hear your songs, and boring stuff, I realise that I need to write every day, and that has to be part of, I suppose we could call it a I don't like the word toolkit, but
that sounds a bit
clinical. I don't, but do you know what I mean? Like a really nice.
We should have a thesaurus on hand.
A thesaurus?
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 Oh, this is a tomato. Potato. And that takes us this week to our song, The Jar.
When it all seems so unclear, and there's nothing filling up your jar but tears, darling, hold on. When you can't tell lies from truth, swimming round and round with no clue, darling, hold on.
Need to shake out some space in the jar to make room to reveal all my scars. Open up, don't give up, break on through what is holding you down. Need to clarify what means more than others, to ensure all the surfaces are clean. Close it off, move on up, mend the fractures, rip the plaster, start to heal. Shake up the jar, shake up the jar, shake it all up. Shake up the jar, shake up the jar, shake it all up. Shake
when you're your only friend, the only one who'll be there till the end, darling. That's it for this week's episode of Beyond the Chord. We hope you enjoyed it as much as we did making it. And join us next week for more chat and tunes. And in the meantime, if you want to send us your thoughts, you can follow us on Instagram at Beyond the Chord. We would love to hear from you. Until next time.